What a lad. Well, when I ask people in this part of the world who is the biggest lad to ever play for the Crusaders, many will give me the name of today's guest. He's a true Southland, Canterbury and Crusader legend who went on to 2 Rugby World Cups with the All Blacks and, of course, did something not many get to do and won it in 2011. He also played over in France with Toulouse and in Scotland with Glasgow. He is one of the game's greatest lads there is. It is, of course, the great man, Corey Flynn. Welcome, mate.
Cheers, mate. It's pleasure to be on. I'm a long-time listener, so we'll see how this goes.
Yeah, mate, I've been trying to get you on for a wee while now. I've been wanting to do this one in person, but obviously everyone I do speak to speaks so highly of you, especially around this part of the world. So you've left a real, legacy here in the Crusaders region.
Yeah, this is a really special part of my life. Coming from Invercargill, just a young fella, and then drafted up in 2002, and then I was here for I left in 2014, so a massive part of my life, and pretty much gave me everything that I've got sort of leading forward.
And I guess a lot of people wondering what you do now, like what does Corey Flynn do now?
Yeah, so into the construction industry, left rugby without basically a plan, and much like many footballers, went through my adult apprenticeship with one of my best mates. He was hiring, and he said, "Look, I'm taking on an apprentice, so I'd like an adult because I pay you on a Wednesday, and I know you're going to show up Thursday, Friday." If you don't show up Monday, then you've pretty much been on the booze with me on Sunday. So I did that for about 6 years.
Sure.
Loved it.
Yeah.
And then I was still trying to play a little bit of footy this year with the Nomads.
Still playing.
Yeah. Oh, it's you still love it.
Yeah.
And the Nomads boys, they don't take too kindly to the training aspect, but they still love playing. So, and it's just a way of getting together and having a beer and catch up and not worrying about too many of the stresses of life and doing something that you do naturally anyway.
Yeah.
So I was doing that, blew my shoulder in the first game. probably due to the fact that there's no training. But yeah, so saw the surgeon, and he just basically told me to grow up and said, you're 42 years old, you've got a shoulder of a 65-year-old, so it's time to give up.
That is decent effort though, to still be out there playing. Is that, did you find that transition really hard going from playing to out of that professional environment? Is that why you felt like you just wanted to keep going?
Yeah, not so much the transition, but it's what you get with the rugby.
Yeah.
So I don't miss the trainings, the meetings, anything like that, but I miss sitting in the changing room after a game that you've just slogged away with 15, 20 of your mates, and then having a beer. I really miss that. I really miss the camaraderie, the friendships that you build through rugby. So yeah, that's the stuff you pine for. The rugby itself, it's a byproduct,
Yeah.
If I have to play a game to get into the sheds and have a beer later, then I'll do that.
Yeah.
And I was always keen to go to the wheels fell off, and the old left one did. So.
They've fallen off.
Well and truly.
But now you're also doing a bit of throwing, New Zealand rugby throwing coach. Is that right?
Yeah. So did some work with the Crusader boys when Jace Ryan was here, and then when he went up into the All Black stuff, he liked what I was doing, so got me sort of across all the super franchises, and I really enjoy that. The coaching aspect for me at the moment, really busy in life outside of rugby with family and stuff, and I'm really enjoying sitting on the sidelines with the kids and seeing their sporting stuff go and putting time into that. So the full-time role of coaching is probably a little bit too much.
Yeah.
So it's a good way of keeping my hand in the game, and there's all care, no responsibility. You basically partner with knowledge, and if boys are keen to learn and do the work, then they're going to get the benefits anyway.
How old are your kids?
I've got a 22-year-old who's fully adulting now, and down in Dunedin, and then with Kerry, my wife. I've got a 16-year-old daughter and a 14-year-old boy.
Oh, yeah. And into the sideline parenting life much, at the moment. Yeah,
pretty much. So pretty busy. Yeah. Uber and ATM. That's about it.
So what's actually involved with the throwing coach? Do you get to all the franchises? How often would you go? And
so this year was a pilot program.
Oh, yeah.
And so we'll see if it sort of grows and what we can get out of it. But I'd like to see it sort of become a national program in terms of what Mike Cron's done with youth scrummaging. So everyone throughout New Zealand pretty much scrums the same way. That way, by the time we get the young kids into Super Rugby or under 20s, under 19s, they're all thrown the same way, and then they've done the work.
Yeah.
Whereas at the moment, these guys aren't being taught, so we're trying to fix guys who have had no coaching when they should be sort of halfway to mastering their craft. So at the moment, this year was purely just Super Rugby and looking after a couple of the guys underneath, and that was consisted of 2 trips through the season, and just sort of spending a couple of days with them.
Who's impressed you? Anyone really stood out as a gun thrower?
Yeah, Jack Taylor's. He's a young kid that's done a lot of work early.
That's cool.
So you see him at the moment, and in terms of throwing, he's good. And now it's just going to be basically he needs time in the saddle. He needs to basically cock up a number of times in game situations where he's going to learn and get better and go back to training and and go through those scenarios. But in terms of his technique and his fundamentals, he's really good. He just needs time in the saddle.
And how does it work for sort of the more experienced ones who have, I guess, kind of mastered their craft, or you sort of hope at that point in their career? How do you sort of adjust, or what are you doing there?
Yeah, it's not so much adjusting. There's tips and there's sort of fundamentals of what you want to do. You want to nice and square, balance through the core, and nice and tight through there, strong. You want your flexibility in your shoulders. You need to keep whilst also putting on size through for your other core roles. So if you've got that, then you can build on that. Some of the older boys obviously got fairly buggered bodies, so they're compensating with different things, and having gone through that, you understand it.
Yeah.
So that you're not going to be able to throw the same way or to throw the way that you should be.
Yeah.
But if you can compensate and work, and it works, then you're fine.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's the older ones are an interesting case too, because you don't know if they're open to changing, because like you say, they think they've mastered the craft.
Yeah.
But if they're not getting picked for any want of a reason, then there's something else.
Yeah.
So you've got to sort of break them down a little bit.
Yeah.
Most of the guys are really open to it, eh?
Yeah. How much of it's mindset? Like, obviously you're teaching the skill, but I'm guessing a lot of it is in the moment, that mindset and having that confidence and back yourself.
Yeah, and you've got to go through hardship to learn what it's like and to learn how to get yourself out of a hole. We talk about red head, blue head, and everything like that. And when you're in that negative loop, it's really hard to get out of. So having those tools to rebalance, recenter, and go through, then that's key. But also having the trust that you've done the work. I remember when I was, say, early 20s, where I was lucky enough to be selected in the All Blacks in 2003, when I hadn't really mastered my craft. And so that gave me a sort of a false impression that I had. And so when I'm getting told that I'm not throwing well or I'm a bad thrower, I'm like, hang on.
I'm an All Black, mate.
So, having that probably was a little bit early. And then so now I've got to try and teach these guys that you've got to go through hardship, go through the shit times to be able to sort of master your craft and go through.
Mate, absolutely killing the line-out throwing. Love that stuff. So pretty keen to get to your journey, as I always do. And I know we've had your cousin Robbie Flynn on. All the true What a Lad original listeners will remember that one. Still goes down as one of the greats. But give me a little bit of a rundown on your upbringing. I know you're from a mad footy family, parents both guns as well.
Yeah, so born and bred in Invercargill, and went to Southland Boys High.
Oh, yeah.
Mum and dad, yeah, like you said, both rugby mad. My sister played, I played, you know, so, and coming from dad's family who were just rugby nuts, you know, so that was always the path that I was sort of going to take. What is it? Yeah, Southland Boys High was where I sort of started to really make some inroads. Aaron Flynn, my uncle, was playing for the Crusaders.
Oh, yeah.
So I sort of come home one day and I realised that I had a little bit of potential, and I said to Mum that I wanted to have a crack at being a professional footy player.
So what age was that?
I was about 15.
Oh, yeah, 15.
You know, 14,
yeah.
15. And I was just a hack.
Yeah.
You know, didn't train, didn't do anything, and so Mum's first words to me were, "You're going to have to work a lot fucking harder before that happens," you know.
Yeah.
And so that was sort of my start. First 15 Southland Boys, I got a trial for that, and I was playing flanker, and basically got told that one of my best mates, Jeff Wright, he was going to make the team as a 7. And I wasn't going to make it.
Oh, shit.
But if I wanted to change to hooker, then there was a spot there. So Peter Scout, he's still coaching at the moment, he's the messiah there. And I'll be forever thankful for him. You know, he sort of put me on that path, and rest is history.
Yeah. How'd you find going into hooker?
Well, I was coming off rowing. I was a rower as well.
Oh, yeah.
So, big long neck, you know, just probably everything that shouldn't be thrown in the front row. Told Mum and Dad, said to Dad, I said, "Oh, look, got a chance of playing hooker. Won't make it as a 7, but have a crack at hooker." And he's like, "Not a chance."
Yeah.
So,
were you big?
Nah,
skinny.
not really. Yeah, skinny. Well, you know, rowing itself, we're fit, you know, just racing sardines. So, yeah, he's like, no chance in hell. Obviously being the protective father.
Yeah.
But then I was like, well, I'm doing it, so we need to sort this out. And he put me in touch with a guy, Lex Chisholm, who used to play for Southland as well. And he gave me neck exercises, everything like that. And yeah, it was, I just never looked back, basically.
Were you trying to become a professional rugby player at this point? Is that what you're thinking?
Yeah, it was in the back of my head. And so that was the start. Yeah. And I was like, oh, well, if this is the way it's going to be, then I'm going to have to play hooker.
Yeah.
So, yeah, the goal stayed the same, but it was just a different position I was going in.
And what was the hardest part of adapting to being a hooker?
The throwing would have been the hardest part, and then just basically the soreness of the body in terms of your neck, shoulders, just getting thrown into a scrum. And those scrums back in the day were a completely different setup to what we've got now.
Yeah.
But yeah, that'd be the biggest thing. But schoolboy footy, it wasn't massive collisions, you know, back then. But these guys that are out there playing now, fully grown men, you know, they're athletes already.
It is crazy. So where did you get your drive from? Like, obviously the drive to want to become pro. Like, where did that come from? Because something obviously referencing Robbie. Robbie was obviously a very talented player, had zero drive compared to you. Sounds like less talented, but incredible drive to try and make it happen.
Yeah, I don't know. I suppose having family that go before, you know, like Dad had played for Southland, Mum had played for Southland, a few of the uncles had played for Southland or Canterbury. Oogie had played for the Crusaders. So seeing those guys go before, you knew that there was ability. You know, there was ability there. And I think also rowing really gave me the drive because you had the ability to work harder than you've ever worked before.
Yeah.
So you were fit. And then when you were fit, I've read McCaw's book, and he was told, the fitter you get, the more enjoyment you have.
Yeah.
And that's true, because all of a sudden you're touching the ball more, you're making more tackles, and it's like, this game's easy.
Yeah.
And so that happens.
Yeah.
And then I suppose that is, that sort of, basically drives the drive as well. You're just like, well, this actually, I could have a decent crack at this, and then you're away. And back then, once you're in the system, then you got looked after as well. So I made New Zealand 16s, and then from there I was in the system and went through schools, 19s, 21s, and yeah.
Was there ever a decision where you had to choose rowing or rugby, or was rowing ever an option for you?
Nah, well, as you know, mate, I'm not the tallest of people, but it was purely, I did it because my best mates were doing it. That's how I sort of fell into it. So Callum Rutledge, he said, "Oh, look, come and do it," and I was like, "Yeah, well, don't know what it is, but let's go." And it's sort of like a drug as well, because it's addictive, because as soon as you get in there at the start, it's horrendous. You don't know what you're doing, but as soon as you start clicking, everyone's moving in the same motion, and you start getting fast. Then you think, "Oh shit, I like this."
Yeah. And
then when you start racing, and if you win a couple or you go well, then you're just like, you're hooked. It's away. So rowing gave me the ability to really dig deep and work hard. And so nothing that I did in rugby sort of was as hard as what we trained in rowing.
Yeah.
I think that was the biggest key.
It's interesting. It gave you that sort of base, mentally and physically on how far you can push yourself.
And that's the thing, because your body's always got more.
Yeah.
There's times when you're rowing. See, like we were 10K bike ride to get out to the river.
Oh shit.
And then we'd go and row to the second bridge, which was like 18K, sort of 9 there and back.
Yeah.
And then our coach would make us go for a run afterwards, and then we'd have to bike home. So, you're pulling some massive miles.
Yeah.
And mum and dad, when I'd come home, I'd have 2 plates of food on the pot just on steam,
Shit.
and I'd just mow that. See you later. And then you're away to bed. Yeah. And so I think I wholeheartedly believe that that rowing gave me the ability to put myself in a real dark hole and get through.
Oh, that's cool. And so I know you played for Southland young. How did that come about?
Played first 15 out of high school into club rugby, and then but I'd signed up to Southland earlier. Broke my leg, and I think it was the first year I was playing both hooker and open side.
Oh yeah.
And I was trialling. We had a trial game for Southland and broke my leg that year.
How was that? How was that to deal with?
Yeah, that was pretty tough. But I hadn't had a break, because I was summer, winter, just going mad through the high school stuff. And so it was my first break that I really had. And probably went a little bit hard on the McDonald's and stuff like that. I put on about 10 kgs.
Did you?
Yeah. It was
good fat.
Yeah. Took a wee while to work that one off. But, and that was just, I suppose, not being able to deal with the injury as best as probably what I could have, but also not had a break for so long. I just vegged,
Yeah.
But yeah, it was one of those things that I look back on and you think, geez, I could have done that a little bit better, but
learn from it.
Yeah, it is what it is. And then so that was first year out of school, and then the year after that played club again, and 2001, I think, yeah. 2001 played MPC, and then got drafted up to Crusaders for 2002.
What was that MPC year like?
Yeah, it was tough.
Yeah.
the old Stags, we bat away.
Yeah.
But a lot of fun. a lot of fun, and it taught me to celebrate your wins as well, because playing for Southland, you never know when they're going to come.
Yeah.
You know, so when you did, yeah, you enjoyed it, and we had a couple of good wins. We beat Wellington up there that year, and hadn't done that in something like 50 years, and so you really enjoyed those times with the lads. But yeah, the boys that I played with down there still great mates with today.
Was it an easy decision to come up to the Crusaders? Was that the only real option for you, or did you have a decision at that point?
It was a massive decision to walk away from Southland.
Oh, yeah.
Because,
so you had to do Canterbury as well? Was that part of the deal?
Yeah. So at the moment, the boys can play NPC where they want, you know. But up here, back then, we had to be signed for NPC in the Crusaders region or the Highlanders region. And Laurie Main's come down and he said, "Oh, look, we're gonna shift Tom Willis up to the Chiefs because he wants to get some more game time. So there's going to be an option there playing for the Highlanders. And I'd really like you to come and play for us." But by then I'd already been drafted up to the Crusaders and had a taste of it. And I was just like, well, you know, thanks, but don't know. The only thing that was holding me to Southland was all of my mates and mum and dad, like that, you know, they're Southland mad. Dad more so, but you know, so we had that. I knew I suppose the chance of becoming an All Black was higher in the Crusaders or in Christchurch, but I still had my loyalty to the Stags. You know? And, you know, it was so tough. And then I remember at the time when I had actually signed with Canterbury, there was newspaper articles that the big money of, you know, the big unions had won and everything like that.
Yeah.
And I had to hold all the information that I had because I knew it wouldn't help the situation, and people just, because, you know, at that time there wasn't many guys coming out of Southland rugby. But the money that Canterbury were offering compared to the money that Southland were offering was way lower.
Oh, true. You know? Yeah.
And so, I had to sort of bite my tongue there. Yeah. It hurt. I was, like, people that know me will know that I like to sort of put my case forward, or, you know, and if I know that it's right, I'll voice it. Yeah. But, and that was one thing that really got me. But, you know, I look back at it now and it's one of those things that at the time you think it's all encompassing and really important, but it's not, you know, and it's only hindsight that gives you that ability. Yeah. Robbie Deans at the time, he said to me, because I was struggling with my decision, and he said, "Look, mate, those that mind don't matter, and those that matter don't mind. So talk to the people that you're closest with, and then you'll come up with your decision." And for me, that was great advice, because, you know, at 20, 21 years old, you're not equipped to deal with that sort of dilemma. And so, so talking to mum and dad and the people that really mattered the most, that's when we decided to come up. And
what was it like coming into this environment for the first time?
Oh, mate, I had eyes like dinner plates, eh? Like, I walked into my first pre-season training. So you know how you join together in the December before the Christmas break. And it wasn't too bad because all the All Blacks were gone. Oh, yeah. So there was only a skeleton crew of us, and there was a few new boys. There was me, Brad Meeker, Johnny Leo. And, you know, so we were Nick White. Who else was there? Reni Ai. So we were the sort of the greenhorns the first years. Yeah. And we're like, oh, yeah, that was pretty cool. And then after the Christmas break, all the big dogs, Marshall, Mertens, you know, all those boys come in. It was like, holy hell. Yeah. You know, now we're in business sort of thing. And I mean, those guys were awesome. And I'd been sort of watching them on TV the year before, and all of a sudden I'm standing in the same gym, and And it's quite funny because you see it when you're older and you see the young kids coming in and they're just like, fucking hell.
Yeah.
But having been through that, then you've got more empathy too for the young ones coming through, and you sort of throw them under the wing and just get them in. But yeah, I still remember it. It was pretty cool.
Did you feel like you were good enough to be there?
I suppose externally you do. You know, you portray that I should be here, but internally you're not.
Yeah,
you know, you're just thinking, holy hell. Especially when you see a guy like Reuben Thorne, who immensely strong, you know, like, and he's throwing weights around like you wouldn't believe, and I'm sitting there, never sort of really been on the bench press, and it's like, holy shit. So when you sit there and you think, fuck, I've got a way to go here.
Yeah.
But I suppose that's the beauty about the environment is, they're accommodating, you know, and so they know that everyone coming in isn't going to be right there or then, but if, say, well, in that time, if Deensy's picked you, then he's seen that there's something there. So, yeah, it was pretty awesome.
Yeah, and it all happened really quick for you too, eh? Like, I don't know if it's following that season, probably one of the real true bolters going to a Rugby World Cup.
Yeah.
How was that?
Yeah, that was scary, to be honest.
Yeah.
You know, like I said, I was only 21 and I was going to the World Cup.
Yeah.
You know, I remember I had a lot of things that I was dealing with at the time because I'd just signed to come up here full time. So, because in those days, if you didn't make it, you'd get a phone call. And so I'd just bought a house up here in Christchurch, and I was in the house, and I get this phone call, unknown number, and I was like, "G'day." I was like, "Yori, it's Mitch here, mate. You got a minute to talk?" And I was like, "Oh yeah."
Hori.
I was like, "Oh yeah." I said, he goes, "Just want to know how your injury's coming along," and because I'd broken my arm.
Oh yeah. And
want to know how your injury's coming along, and when you'll be back playing. I said, "Oh, actually got a club game next week, and all going well, should be back into it." He says, "Sweet," and I thought I'd just ring you just out of courtesy, just to let you know that you made the All Blacks for the World Cup. I was like, "Yeah, it's cool, mate. I was just coming off the injury. It didn't really even come into my thinking." So he's like, "Yeah, no, that's cool. We'll keep in touch with your injury and your return to play and stuff like that, and we'll just keep in touch." And I was like, "Cool, no worries. Thanks for that." And he goes, "Oh, just by chance, how's the shoulder?" I was like, "Shoulder?" And he goes, Yeah. He said, "Well," I said, "Mate, I broke my arm. That's my injury was my arm." And Mitch goes, "Who's this?" I said, "It's Flynny, Corey Flynny." He goes, "Oh." He said, "I told my PA to ring Hori to get me Hori's number."
Oh, hell.
So she must have heard Corey. So he rings me, and then he's like, "Oh, well, while I've got you on the phone, just want to let you know that you come to the World Cup."
Oh.
And I'm like, "What?" So I'm sitting there and I've ridden the roller coaster, and so he told me then and there, and he says, "Look, you can't let anyone know, but you come to World Cup." I was like, he said, "The press release is 6:00 tonight, so watch the news with with the people that matter."
Jeez, that is crazy.
Like, so I got off the phone, rang mum and dad, and I said, "You've got to be watching the news." And basically did cartwheels around the empty house.
So he called you thinking you were Hori to tell you that you weren't going.
Yeah.
Far out. And you obviously weren't expecting to make it at all. Like you say, you've just come into the Crusaders feeling a little bit uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Now you're off to a Rugby World Cup.
And that's the thing, like I said earlier, I hadn't mastered anything. I was a beneficiary of being in a super environment like the Crusaders. So yeah, it was, hindsight, it was too early.
Yeah.
But it was also a hell of an eye-opener and a lot of fun as well.
Yeah. So when you're doing your cartwheels and celebrating the fact that you're now an All Black, when does that sort of turn to, oh shit, I've got the country needing me to perform at this Rugby World Cup here?
Yeah, I suppose it wasn't until we lost the semi-final that you really understood the magnitude of it.
Yeah.
Because up until then, I still didn't really have a lot of the pressure on me that the big boys had, because I was a bolter, I was young, I was seen as a development sort of project. So, never really felt that absolute pressure until we lost, and then basically the world imploded.
Yeah.
And the All Blacks were hated, and it's like, whoa, Jesus, this is actually really important.
Yeah.
You know, and so seeing that's when you really knew the importance of the All Blacks doing well at World Cups.
And what was that like for you at such a young age to go through all that?
Again, probably didn't appreciate it as much as what I could have, you know, because, you know, like I automatically thought, well, I'm 21. I got 4 more years. I'll be 25.
Yeah.
Geez, you know, like potentially I could be 29 and go to another one, you know. And so I didn't actually think that it was all that bad, you know, because I thought I was going to have another crack. But obviously then being on the other end of it and say 2011, knowing that was potentially my last, you sort of know how important it is and how you should appreciate it. But yeah, I mean, a lot of my younger career, I would have loved to have, that'd probably be the one thing that I changed.
Yeah.
Would be that, and being as diligent or being as appreciative of everything that's coming.
Yeah. Because it's interesting how I look at your career and All Black career, and it sort of spans over like 9 years, and you look at how many caps, and it's 15 caps. So,
yeah. And that was there's the injuries, and then there's the not mastering the craft early.
Yeah.
That didn't set me up well enough, you know, because when you're young and you get it early, you do have a bit of an overinflated ego of yourself, you know, and then impression of yourself. Sorry, so you give it. It takes a lot of smacking to break that out of you. And you know, whether it be injuries or non-selections, you've essentially got to rebuild, you know. And I think that was the one thing that I would have changed. Yeah.
What did that look like for you coming out of there, and how would you have changed it?
Well, I would have, like, if I'd had the ability to, I suppose, learn my craft, hone it for another 3 years, then I would have been well equipped to have a crack at was it 2007, you know? But in that time where I should have been mastering, I was thinking that I was better than what I was.
Yeah.
And then on top of that, I also had injuries that I was having to deal with mentally, and that was hard.
Yeah.
You know, and so not having the ability to have confidence in what I was doing on the field, or and then dealing with the injuries, then it just snowballed, and I ended up not getting the best out of me.
Yeah. And I mean, you did have a terrible run of injuries, really, didn't you? Like, there's a patch there where it was just seemed to be injury after injury, and you talk about how hard that was to deal with. What does that look like?
That looks like probably a kid that should be hitting his straps, you know, playing some of the best footy that he's playing, or that he's played, and really going and making a fist of it, to a guy probably broken on the inside physically and half broken mentally, knowing that he's not able to do what he should be doing. And and then you're getting paid like a professional. You're amateur in a big sense of the word, because you think back 2002 through to, I suppose, 2008, 2009 is when we really started getting professional.
Yeah.
So getting paid really well, and then probably, well, not probably, but pissing up too much, you know, because that was the way that you dealt with it. Crusaders' mantra back in those days was work hard, play hard. It was the old DB, the DB logo, you know. So you get into that cycle, and like I say, that red head, blue head, you get in that negative loop, and you just stay in it. You stay in it, and then you build, or you cement those routines, and that's just what it is. And then so I went through, obviously, I think 4 on one arm and 1 on the other, you know, so I did that 5 times.
That's crazy, eh?
And then I had syndesmosis, I had shoulders, you know, so every time I was just on that loop. And then, you know, so like I said, I touched back on not honing my craft. So when I was coming back and getting into playing, because I didn't have all of my big blocks sorted, when I was told by coaches and everything like that I was missing out because of my throwing, but they were picking players like, say, an Allard de Malmont, who was known that he wasn't a good thrower.
Yeah.
You know, but I'd been picked earlier because I was good enough, but now I'm told that my throwing's not up to standard. I'm like, well, hang on.
Yeah.
But again, I thought that my big blocks were in place, but because I was told, you know, but they weren't, essentially.
Yeah.
And then, so that's all encompassing. That's the extra weight, and then you're back in that loop.
Yeah.
You know? So I think that was my biggest learning later on coming out, and getting, I suppose, a redemption, then, that's what I learned most.
And when you're in there, you mentioned the drinking, like, what did that look like? How often was that?
Well, you know, like, we'd be, after every away game for the Crusaders, we'd have a court session, you know, like, we'd be locked out into
every week.
You know, in 2002. Yeah. 2002, we went through unbeaten.
Yeah.
And
lockdowns.
And so we had, what we'd do, every away game we'd have a court session, and, you know, it'd only be an hour.
Yeah.
It wasn't massive amounts of drinking.
Yeah.
It was more getting the boys in, getting tight. But if you wanted to have a few beers, you could. And so, I was never one to shy away from it. So, we'd get into it, and that was, and then in 2003, when, we come back, I remember, because we went through unbeaten, and I remember sitting in this room, this was our meeting room, and Darren Shand, who's obviously just finished up at the All Blacks now, he was our manager then, and he was trying to get us to be more professional at that time. And so he's sitting there, and he goes, righto, boys, you know, like, we had a good year last year, went through unbeaten, said, just setting the scene for going forward. I think we should start getting a little bit more professional, what that looks like, not pissing up as much, Justin Marshall's sitting in the back row. I'm in the front row, the new boy. And then Shandy's sitting there doing his bit up the front, and Marshall's like, Shandy, we're Crusaders. We work hard. We play hard. Sit down. You know, I'm 22 years old. Inside I'm going, yeah, boy. So, you know, and like, knowing what we know now, that wasn't the right thing to do, you know, but at the time it was like, wow, awesome. So, bloody hard case. But
so how did you get out of that cycle? Like, eventually you talk about the redemption story, like, what flicked for you?
Well, I hit rock bottom, to be truthfully honest. So when would that have been? About 2008, 2009.
Okay.
It was quite not funny, but was interesting looking back on it now. The boys or the people in the know were waiting for it to happen, you know. So, Kiralee, my wife, she was about ready to up sticks and leave with the kids and stuff. So pretty much gave me an ultimatum. I rang up Dave Hewitt, who was the professional development manager at the time.
Yeah.
And I said, Tiger, I need help. I need help, mate. And he could sense it in my voice that something bad had happened. And he was like, I'll be there in 5 minutes. Hung up the phone, and he was at my house in 5 minutes. And we basically sat down, went through everything, and went from there. They were apparently ready to go. They knew that something was going to happen and I was going to need help. So they had everything sort of just ready to go, and then boom, they hit the go button. And I was in a counsellor that afternoon, talking to a drug and alcohol counsellor. And then, yeah, that was the start of the redemption, I suppose.
Crazy. How did they all know? And were you aware of how close you were to being rock bottom?
Nah, not at all. And that's the thing. It wasn't until even at that point, I probably didn't understand how close I was either. It wasn't until Kiralee sat down in front of the counsellor with me in the room and basically told her story. And that was the shotgun in the face.
Yeah.
It was like, fuck, here we go.
Yeah.
So that was the time that really got me.
Yeah. Was it an addiction, or so what was it?
I suppose addiction potentially is definitely there. I mean, but it's also just like I'm a lad, you know.
Escape type.
Yeah. And being with the lads, having beers, like there's nothing better, you know, but it's being able to rein it in and stuff like that. So, I mean, as it stands today, I've been off the piss since January because I'd sort of got into the same sort of, I suppose, routines.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I've just knocked off the piss again, and just I suppose a reset. But
to show you've still got control of.
Yeah, and because you don't, like, obviously with the kids at the ages that they're the ones missing out. And you know, so yeah, just sort of trying to make sure that you got the most important things in your life when you need them. Yeah,
mate, that's powerful. So when you go see the counsellor and then the whole redemption starts, what does that look like?
So knocked off the booze. I sort of said to Kiralee, look, I'll do a year sober.
Was that hard?
Yeah, it was. Yeah, at the start it was, because back then there was no alcohol, zero beers.
Yeah.
You know, zero alcohol beers. So every time, like for 3 months, I didn't basically leave the house. It was work, train, that, you know, and then that was it.
Yeah.
But then slowly but surely, you're not really worried about having a beer or something like that. But when you do go out, you've got nothing in your hands. You know,
what do I do?
Yeah. It's like, and everybody, if you haven't got anything in your hand, everyone's like, oh, do you want a drink, mate? I was like, no, I'm not drinking. Oh, why aren't you drinking?
Yeah. Like, tell the whole story.
Well, where do you want me to start? So that was tough.
Yeah.
At the moment, like now, it's sweet because you can zero alcohol beer, but it's also widely accepted that people don't drink anymore.
Yeah.
You know, so it's not a big deal now.
Yeah.
But yeah, back then it was.
Yeah, I bet.
And especially knowing me as a person, knowing that that I love being out with the lads and stuff like that.
Yeah.
You know, people were a little bit worried.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that was sort of what transpired. Did the 1 year, but once I'd got to the 1 year, everything else started falling into place. And I remember the old lady telling me, she's like, Corey, anytime things happen in your life that's bad. It's all around alcohol. And I'm like, yeah, whatever, Mum, you know.
Yeah.
I didn't want to hear it at that time, but
Yeah.
obviously once I sort of got clear and everything like that, then you remember those things. And so got to the year, everything had started working out pretty well. I hadn't been injured, was playing some good footy. So then it was like, well, I might as well just have a crack at maybe getting into this World Cup and doing that. So sort of went on to the end of the World Cup, yeah.
And did you feel like you were a good chance to make that World Cup?
No, I didn't think it was a shit show.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I had when I was approaching rock bottom, we had a test match in Dunedin, and I was down there as a part of DB in the corporate box, and beside us there was another corporate box, and in that one, because it was after 2007, you know, and then in the box beside us, Graham Henry's wife was in there, Rowan, and I didn't know this, and so I'm half shit-faced, probably full-time shit-faced actually, and once they lost that game, I think it was against the box, they lost that game, I was like, I should have got rid of them, you know, fucking after 2007.
Oh, shit.
And she saw this, she heard this, and, you know, like knowing how protective my mum, you know, my wife is of my career,
Yeah.
you know, how protective, you know, each person's wives or, you know, closest people are of their own husbands, fathers. And, I got a phone call the next day from someone inside the All Blacks camp, basically said, you made a bit of a dick of yourself. I had no clue.
Oh, you didn't know you'd said it? No.
Nah, didn't. I knew that I'd said it, but I didn't know who was in the box, you know. So I was just like, oh, it's just what it was. Anyway, got a phone call. You said a few things in the box, and I was like, probably. I was half pissed, full pissed. And they said, yeah, well, Graham Henry's wife was in the other box. And then that sinking feeling just comes. I was like, anxiety comes. It's like, oh no. So that was 2008, the first test, I suppose. And so from that, I was on the back burner. And
jeez, you did well to make it after that. That's a rough start.
And rightly so, you know, like, yeah, I remember, you know, because, like, I know I'm not an asshole of a person.
Yeah.
Know, but I had to own it.
Yeah.
Because, like, I'd made that mistake, and I was like, oh, yeah, righto. So got put out to pasture, and slowly but surely started making inroads after hitting the bottom, and then play started coming back, and obviously having the likes of your McCaws, your Brad Thorns, DCs, all those guys that I'm working with at the Crusaders day in, day out. And then they were looking for a third option with the All Blacks because they hadn't settled on one.
Yeah.
And then so the boys went into bat for me and said, look, you know, this guy's fucking made some changes and rah-de-rah. And so I got another crack, and that was some of the most scared I've ever been.
Was it? Yeah.
You know, because I'd never seen Ted or anything beforehand leading into it.
So this was the first time you'd met him since the conversations and all that. Wow.
Yeah. And got called into a camp, and then the first people I walk into in an elevator, Graham Henry, Rowan Henry. And I'm like, hadn't seen anyone. I just start sweating bullets.
What do you do?
Thankfully that it was only us three in the elevator.
Yeah.
And I just had to swallow my pride, apologise, front it.
Yeah.
And I just said, look, you know, there were things said. I said, I'm so sorry. I shouldn't have said it, you know.
Yeah.
Right. Ted shook my hand and said, no. He said, it's forgotten. Just, you know, make it good. And that was that. And I was like, oh, yeah. Raven didn't say a thing to me.
Yeah.
And So I knew that it wasn't all forgotten. So had that. And then you think too, all the wives and everyone, they get invited to stuff and that sort of thing. And so when Kerry had been introduced to Raewyn, she didn't give her the shirt, didn't give her the steam off her ship because she was assigned to me.
Yeah.
So it was really tough for Kerry, and so for those next couple of years, I was just pushing shit uphill with the rake. But to Ted's credit, he never had to take me back in.
Yeah.
And I'm forever thankful for him for doing it. After we won the World Cup, I was sitting there I'd actually had my first beer, and I was sitting there having a beer, and Raewyn come up to me and sort of tapped me on the shoulder, and she said, Corey, I appreciate what you've done, appreciate owning it, it's forgotten. And I was like, it was seriously like the weight of the world had just gone off my shoulders, But so having all that hang over you, fucking burden, eh?
Yeah.
And carrying that sort of luggage around, it's not good. It's not good for the soul.
That is crazy. And I know, like in the Crusade environment, you were like, you were a real leader. Like you'd say what was on your mind. You were, one of those types of players. Going into the All Blacks, did you feel like you could still do the same, or did you have to just sit up the front, shut your mouth, and just do what you're told?
Yeah, I think by the end of it, by the end of 2011, I felt that I deserved my place there.
Yeah.
And I was comfortable, contributing and everything like that. Earlier on, say 2003, 2004, that sort of stuff, I didn't even think I should have been an All Black. So there was no way. But when I first got back in after my hiatus, I was just zip it. But it's easier too when you've got the ear of the likes of McCaw or someone that I could have a talk to behind closed doors.
Yeah.
The All Blacks for me was a different experience in terms of never really felt like I belonged up until the final of the World Cup, and sitting there on the field, really appreciating my journey of getting back there and seeing everyone sort of celebrating and I remember Shag coming up to me and shaking my hand and giving me a hug and going, well done, you just had that satisfaction. I was like, oh, thank fuck for that.
Yeah.
I haven't been a fuck up all my life. But that's when I sort of got the feeling of that's what the likes of McCaw and those guys that established, that's what they must feel like, when they come into this environment.
Yeah.
Because you felt like you belonged.
Yeah.
Well, I did. I felt like I belonged at that point.
Yeah. And obviously getting to win Rugby World Cup, not an easy thing to do, and pretty special.
Yeah, it was. And that was the thing, like you say, when you get there and you achieve it, you understand, or you really appreciate what you've given up and what's transpired to get you into that point, and that's when you really start to appreciate stuff.
I was just thinking around Izzy and CJ through that World Cup, and I'm guessing you probably had a bit of empathy for them. Did you have a word to them, or what was your advice to those guys once they'd gone through all that?
One of my mates had come across Izzy and CJ at the time.
Oh yeah.
And so he rang me. I had missed phone calls from him. I was like, what the hell's this? And so I rang him back the next day, and he's like, bro, I don't think CJ and Izzy are going to be in good states today. And I was like, so he told me the story.
Yeah.
And so I was like, oh, yep, righto. So went off to find Izzy. And I remember seeing him, he was white as a ghost. And I was like, geez, bro, you look worse for wear, yeah? And so we're sitting there, and he told me about what had happened, and then everything that sort of come in afterwards was the biggest shock for them. Like me saying or me coming down on them wasn't gonna.
Yeah.
I remember we got called into the team room. Everybody knew what had happened, and then McCaw stood up in front of the team, and basically here's CJ and Izzy. I think they were up the front, but they're just sitting there like little school kids, and Rick just dealt to them. He's like, "Who the fuck do you think you are?" You know. And from then, because this was early too.
Yeah.
Like, this was pretty much straight away as soon as it happened. Everyone just went, Jesus. Everyone knew. And so from there, no one had to say anything.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was one of those things. The biggest thing was then Smithy, who he'd done so much, and he just couldn't comprehend what had happened. He was like, why would they do that?
Mm-hmm.
You know. But everyone who is an Izzy CJ type of personality were like, yeah, I could see how that would happen.
Yeah.
You know? But the likes of McCaw or Smithy, those type of personalities,
Yeah.
they're just like, what the fuck?
Yeah.
You know, and I suppose that's the beauty about a rugby team, is that you've got so many different personalities.
100%.
But yeah, it was an interesting time.
And had you signed to go over to France at this point? Or was that after you made that decision after?
No, so I just started playing pretty good footy, and it was on the back of being fresh, you know, having a good run of injury free, that sort of thing. Like I remember when Toddy Black had to come in, I was in and out with injury and stuff like that, leading into, I think 2010. He sits me down and he goes, "Well, we need to have a yarn." He said, "I've invested pretty heavily in you, and you haven't, my rate of return of investment is pretty fucking minimal."
Yeah.
I was like, "Yeah, fair cool." So we come up with a plan, and he said, "Look, I just want you to get through a game." He said, "Don't worry about anything in terms of how you're playing." He said, just walk off the field and be able to suit up for me the next day." And so for the next 6 weeks, that's what he did. Every one-on-one that I had with him, he's like, "Cool. Success.
Yeah.
You're not injured."
Got through it. How'd you do that?
I don't know, but it was all the pressure, you know, like the pressure of hitting lineouts, pressure of playing well. It's like, you know, so everything is all bound up.
Yeah. Okay.
And then slowly but surely he started putting a little bit more on me. And then so by that time I was in the groove and I was away. And then so everything followed on 2011, and I was just flying, I was humming. So I started thinking, well, what am I doing? Am I staying or am I going? And so stayed on for another couple of years. We had 2012, and then, signed for another couple of years after that. Got to 2014, halfway through the season, got called into the big dog's office with, there was Dave Hewitt, Toddy, and Richard Smith, RJ, who was at that time the contracts manager. And they said, what's your plans for next year? I said, I don't know, mate. Hopefully play pretty well and maybe go to a World Cup. And they said, yeah. I said, look, I'd really love to stay on and retire as a Crusader, you know, be a one club man. See you later. So they said, yeah, okay. RJ goes, well, next year we don't see you starting for the Crusaders. I was like, well, what have I missed? I said, we're mid-season. We're the end of season.
Yeah.
I looked at Toddy and I said, Toddy, if we go through semi-finals or anything, who's your starting hooker? He said, you are. I said, okay. So if we go to the final, I start at hooker. How in that time do I lose my spot? I was, yeah, it just doesn't make sense, mate.
Yeah.
And then
big off season.
Yeah. I was like, I think I've got things in check. So then, you know, obviously RJ sort of takes the lead and says, well, we've got Ben Fennell, Cody Taylor and everything like that coming through. And I said, understand that. I said, but they're not ready to go just yet. I said, give me that time. Let me have another year at, you know, having number one and then going through two and, you know, see my way out. But they didn't give me sort of that assurance. They were like, oh, well, we don't see you as being number one next year, so we're going to cut your contract by X amount. And I was like, Jesus, this is a shot in the face.
It's brutal, eh? Especially considering you're playing so well.
And so especially, and like for me to take, that was tough, you know, but it was also easier because of everything that I'd been through as well. And I was like, oh, well, this is what it is. Kiralee will probably tell you different, but, you know, it did cut me to the bone.
Yeah.
You know, because you see how much effort you put in while you're here. And then all of a sudden you just realize that you're a commodity. And it's like, oh, well, okay. Once you accept that, then it's easier.
Yeah.
And I think that's the difference now with boys, I suppose, is that they're professional enough to know that it's not forever and it's just a business. Whereas the amateur to professional, you still had the loyalty factor that you thought you're sort of bound by.
Deserved, yeah, especially 150 games.
Yeah. And then, you know, and it was because I didn't think that I was asking for too much that I didn't deserve.
Yeah.
You know, like if I wasn't playing well, you know, then I would have accepted. I would have been like, oh yeah, but I just couldn't understand how I'd go from an off season to not being starting or number one hooker.
Yeah.
And yeah, it was, that was the biggest thing. And not having the likes of Blackadder sort of stand up and say, actually, Flynny, no, you are my number one. I was like, well, because I gave him the opportunity to do it.
Yeah.
But he didn't. I was like, yeah, you old bastard. So, so that was that.
So France it was.
Yeah. And then just by chance, about a week later, Warren Alcock was here doing something and I was walking past him. He goes, oh, sit down. I was like, oh yeah. And he goes, how's everything going? I said, oh, yeah, well, you've obviously heard about what's happening here. And he goes, yeah. He goes, well, have you ever thought about a move to France? I said, oh, no, but what have you got? So he said, well, Toulouse are interested on a medical joker because Chili Boy Relapelli had bust his knee.
Oh, yeah.
And so he told me what that entailed. It was only going to be like a 6-month contract. And I was like, no, I'm not doing that. And then so he went back to them and basically said, he'll come for the medical joker if you guarantee another year. So yeah, we did that.
True.
And yeah, loved it. It was really cool. Like at the start, when Kiralee was studying, so she stayed here for 4 months or something like that with the kids. I went over, I was living with Luke McAllister.
Oh yeah.
He was the king of Toulouse at the time.
I bet.
And, so had him sort of helping me out. He spoke a fair amount of the language. And then, yeah, got set up with a house and got ready for the kids and Kiralee to come over, about December, just before Christmas. And yeah, it was good times. Like there were, you know, he was living right in the middle of Toulouse but then he bought a house, a little bit out of Toulouse. So had the best of both worlds where inner city living, you know, we'd get home from training and then we're straight into the restaurants and just having feed and just living life.
Sure.
But yeah, then also moved out to the suburbs as well and understood what it was going to be like when, you know, the family come over and but got a good lay of the land while I was there.
And what was the footy like? Was it hard for you to adjust?
Yeah, it was. And, especially because when you see, so Toulouse had a star-studded lineup. You know, you had Emmanuel Harry-Nordique, Thierry Dusautoir, we had Census Johnson, Joe Tukuri, Patricio Albacete, you know, guys who have played a lot of international rugby, and that's just the forward pack. You know, the back line, we had Vincent Clerc, Florian Fritt, Gail Fiku, you know, so it was unbelievable, the team that we could field.
Yeah.
But yet it was just ad hoc, you know, like it was play, just, there was no structure. And so I was sort of like, well, if we had a little bit of structure to ignite this flare, then we're going to rip shit to bits.
Yeah.
So, and at that point we were, there was the 2-4-2 that we had played in New Zealand for a bit. So, introduced that. I said to Luke, I was like, mate, we need to talk to these boys, and he sort of had a look at it and he enjoyed it. He was like, fuck, actually that looks all right.
Yeah.
So took it to Dusautoir, and who speaks really good English. And so talked to TT, and he was happy to front it as the captain and go forward. What we didn't do is go through John Baptiste, who was the attack coach.
Oh, okay.
And so we took it to the head coach, Guy Novies, and then he was like, yep, let's do it. So we implemented it without going through the attack coach. It was a big mistake. We found out about French rugby right there and then, and then implemented it. We started training it. Boys took to it like ducks to water. You know, you think a little bit of structure to ignite flair that people play with anyway.
Yeah.
It's just gonna, you know, it's gonna flourish. And so all of a sudden, because we were just playing around the corner, sending 8 forwards, you know, scrum around the corner, just play, jouer. And then, and so giving these guys set spots to be in the field where then we can just go. And we played the first game with this structure, and we scored 6 or 7 tries. And I was like,
mate, master coach.
We're on. We're on. And the boys were loving it. Very next week, gone. Never saw it again.
Oh, really?
Ever.
Oh, true.
Yeah, gone.
The tech coach came in.
Yeah, it squashed it. I was like, oh, well. So that was the introduction to French rugby, and basically just shut up and do your job and, you know, go from there.
So then you moved to Glasgow.
Yeah. So I had 2 seasons with Toulouse. Loved it. Lifestyle, everything like that, you know, because I would never have moved.
Yeah.
I would never have moved. And I would never have experienced it either. So, you know, beauty of hindsight, I'm quite thankful that RJ and that, you know, poo-pooed me.
Yeah.
Because it wouldn't have given me that.
Yeah.
You know, but having the ability, or having 2 years there, and my last year I didn't play a lot, my body sort of recovered, and it's not taxing. It's physically taxing because your scrums, mauls, it's a big part of the game, but you're not running massive meters. So your training meters aren't massive. So my body was in really good nick, but the kids were getting bullied at school. They didn't like it as much as Kiralee and I were liking it. So we had an option of going to Glasgow to get the kids back into English speaking and stuff like that. So we went from south of France, average temperature of about 20 degrees, up to Glasgow. And, that was a shock.
Did you know what you're going into? Had you looked into it, or probably not as much detail as you should have?
The weather we knew. I mean, coming from Invercargill, not worried about too much cold, but, the shock that I got, or like there was basically in New Zealand, never trained in longs or jackets, you know, it was always a thermal and a jersey and shorts. Whereas in Glasgow, I never got out of longs and a jacket and a full beanie, you know. It was pretty brutal.
Yeah.
It was, I remember, there was a couple of times where the Christmas period, it was actually McCall's wedding. I was meant to come back for it, and Gregor Townsend he'd said, "Oh yeah, we'll let you off, and you can get back for that wedding." Anyway, come time to go for that wedding, he's like, "Oh no, we've got Heineken Cup coming, mate. I need you to be available for that."
Yeah.
So Kiralee and the kids come back into summer, and I'm in the heat of the Glasgow winter. So I'm sitting there going to training. We're getting vitamin D pills given to us because the sun only basically goes high enough to cover the far 5 metre line in sunshine. It was pretty depressing. And then I'm FaceTiming Kiralee and the kids, in the morning or at night. Well, yeah, at night, I suppose. And then, so they're in daylight and it's blue skies, flat lakes. Yeah. And I'm just sinking deeper and deeper into depression, eh? So, but in terms of as a whole, I really enjoyed Glasgow.
Yeah.
The people were awesome. The teammates that I had there were second to none.
Yeah.
They were good boys. I remember a guy, Rory Hughes. He's a Scottish winger, and he's Glaswegian. And I was sitting next to him in the changing room, and everyone's introducing themselves to me. Rosa introduces himself, and he's speaking in this real thick Glaswegian accent, which I thought was Italian or something. and so he's sitting there and he's talking away, and he walks out, and I was like, Where's old mate from? He's like, it's from Scotland, mate. He's from Glasgow. I was like, fuck me. I can understand, because we had Simone Favaro as well. I can understand Simone way better than this guy. So having those guys, they were awesome. Really enjoyed the company, and having rugby as the common denominator, it's easy, and me as a player, I was going to work doing everything that I was in Toulouse or at the Crusaders. So for me, it was no different.
Yeah.
One thing that we did have was the kids were happy because they were in school, and
crucial.
Yeah. The kids were happy, but then Kiralee wasn't, because she was going to work at the MHC, and then so she's walking in, it's dark.
Yeah.
Walking out and it's dark. She's like, fucking miserable. So I'm like, oh. But yeah, so it's those things that you got to weigh up. And we had signed 2 years. We had signed 2 years with Glasgow, because I said to Gregor, I said, well, if it's only 1 year, I might as well just try and find something in France for a year and go home after that. So signed 2 years, and then come to the end of, going into the first year, I said, look, mate, I'm 35 years old. I haven't got the runs that I'm not going to be able to do much running.
Yeah.
My knees are, he says, no, we're not going to run you that much for off-field, train you, rah-de-rah. So that was all good. As soon as I got there signed, I was expected to be running 5-6K of training. And I was like, whoop, here we go.
Here we go.
So, and the trainer at the time, Thibaut Girard, he's a French trainer now. He's a Frenchman, but he'd been French bobsleigh, he'd been American football.
Oh yeah,
stuff like, so he knew a lot about training. He was awesome. And so he would take me and train me off feet instead of running. And, but because I wasn't making meters at training, I didn't warrant being picked for the game.
Oh,
yeah. It was just that sort of the old Hitler way of coaching.
Oh, that's crazy.
So obviously people, again, listening that know me, know that we're just, the coach and I would butt ahead. So, it was hard. I don't know how much I can actually say, but because, in order to leave, I had to sign a NDA. Oh yeah. Yeah. So, But yeah, it was interesting.
Wow, that is crazy, eh?
And because they don't have a players' association over there, or they didn't.
Yeah.
So it was my way or the highway from the management. So, which was really, really disappointing because the boys are awesome. And they work. They work, and fit and strong, and, so if they had a little bit of buy-in, which I think they potentially do now, then you could see where they could go. But, like seeing some of the stuff that's happened since with the likes of Finn Russell and Gregor, and, seeing the blow-ups there, it's like, there was always going to be. So, because I remember we were at training and they'd showed a video, and it was of the All Blacks playing a team and looking at running a hard evens line and manipulating defence, popping the ball, and then someone breaking through that line.
Yeah.
They're breaking through the hole. I was like, fuck, this is awesome. This is our game.
Yeah.
I can do that. So anyway, went to run it in training, took the ball, popped it. Boy went through, got tackled, sweet, and blew the whistle. Gregor goes, Corey, that's not how you do it. I was like, oh, okay. He says, you have to catch the ball, look, and pop it. And I'm like, wait, me. I'm sitting there and I'm like, well, if you look on the video, then Kieran Reid, we call it lying with your eyes, so you're hoeing straight there, looking at that defender, no look pass, because you want him to bite in on you.
Yeah.
He says, well, that's not how we do it here. I was like, well, you just told us that you want us doing it like the All Blacks are doing it. So, okay, sorry, my bad. I didn't say that, but in my head, that's what I'm saying. And then, so anyway, Sean Lamont played 100 games for Scotland, and he comes up and he's like, Flynny, he says, if I can give you a piece of advice, don't challenge the gaffer. I was like, really? I didn't really. He goes, he said, otherwise you'll be playing club rugby. Yeah. I'm like, nah, surely not. He said, trust me. Anyway, next week I'm playing club rugby.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, playing club rugby, and that was the beginning of the end.
True, that's crazy.
Yeah, mate. Yeah, and that was it's a shame because the likes of Gregor, massive knowledge, but if he had the ability to not be so much as well the highway, huge potential there as a coach, and he probably still could be, but the boys will only take the Hitler approach for so long, and then they'll start pulling away. But because the boys they lived in fear of him, because you're going and playing club rugby, if you don't, yes sir, no sir.
Yeah.
But also they'd had some success as well, but that was on the back of the other coaches before and the culture that they had built. Yeah. And he was just slowly eroding that.
Oh, that's interesting, eh? That's fascinating.
So, it's just a shame. And then, but then, when Dave Rennie come in, he had a good culture.
Were you there when Rennie? No, the year after.
I got sacked.
Yeah.
I got sacked the year before.
Yeah.
Rennie come in, and I was gutted because I'd been beaten by Dave in 2011, 2012. 12 and 13. And so I was keen to learn and actually be under him and see what the fuck made those Chiefs so good in those years. You know? But, so I was a little bit gutted about that. But yeah, and then, yes, that was the beginning of the end.
Yeah.
Sort of challenging the gaffer, and I learned a lesson there
quickly. And then I guess your wife would have been happy you did, because it brings you back to New Zealand, right? And then you're playing for Westcoast.
Yeah. So we got through. I got a disciplinary hearing request from Glasgow, and then so we went through all of that. And we were about to go on holiday, and I'd been asked to play for the Barbars.
Oh, yeah.
And so I rang Dave Rennie because he was the coach of the following year.
Oh, yeah.
So I rang Dave Rennie and said, mate, been asked to play for the Barbars. What's your thoughts on that? And knowing full well that probably should have asked Gregor, but he wasn't going to be the coach because he was going to Scotland.
Yeah.
Knowing Gregor would have said, not a fucking shit show now.
Yeah.
So I rang Dave, and he's like, yeah, I don't see a problem with that, mate. Yeah. So said to Vern Cotter, yeah, I'm available, run. Then it got through back to Gregor, and he said, why didn't you ask me? I said, well, you're not the coach next year, mate, so I thought it'd be the person that directly affects, and yeah, he wasn't that happy. So then basically that's when it all fucking erupted.
Shit.
And then we were about to go on holiday, but we had all this hanging over our head. Mm-hmm. And then they called me and offered me a settlement, and then that was it. It was basically, right, don't have to spend another winter in Scotland.
Yeah.
Didn't really see my career ending like this, so I might as well, but, you know.
Yeah.
But
did you try and play back here?
Nah. It was the settlement that I got allowed us to come home, reset, let me get the kids away to school, all that sort of stuff, decompress.
Yeah.
And then I was just going to start looking at life after footy.
Yeah.
Had Sean Cuttins at the time. He was the coach, and he said, would you think about coming and playing for the Coast? And I was like, oh, well, I plan to play this year anyway.
Yeah.
So, yeah, why not? And harder on the liver than it was, you know, physically anywhere else.
Yeah.
But it was awesome.
Yeah.
You know, it gave me a real appreciation of grassroots rugby again, because when you're in it for so long and professional stuff for so long, you forget what it was like back in the day. And when you're working, you know, working your 9 to 5, and then we had guys, Dan Davies, he was driving 2 hours from Haast to come up and train, you know, and just all purely for the love of it.
Crazy. Yeah. So cool.
So you see that, you see what guys give up and sacrifice just to play footy, and it gives you a real love again, because, and having that where I'd been sacked, I was a little bit pissed off. I was a bit bitter. So going back into that gave me the love again, and really enjoyed it, and gave me the ability just to sign off on the way that I wanted to.
It's a cool way to do it, eh? And everyone who has done it has spoken so highly of playing Heartland. Yeah,
it is. I mean, and that's the thing. Like, if your body's still in check, then you've got the, you know, like I'd recommend it. Yeah, it is cool, and you give so much back. You know, and physically you're definitely not able to do what you used to be able to do, but you can still get away with what you need to at that level. I remember we went up to Ruatoria and played the Coast.
Scenes.
Mate, it was awesome, you know. And so we're playing the game, and I was holding on to their flanker, who was the captain at the time, and hold him into the ruck, and he just stood up and boom, and just belted me, you know. And it was in front of the referee, because in professional stuff, you wouldn't get that. Yeah. There's no way you'd get that, because you've got cameras everywhere on you. Yeah. And so he was just like, nah, not having any of that. I was like, what? Fully deserved it. And then penalty, well, you're off. And he's like, what? Just for smacking an all back, you know. And then, after the game comes up, you know, buys me a beer. Yeah. He's like, sorry, mate, had to. I said, I was rapt that you did. Sort of, you forget what it's like. Yeah. But, you know, back in the day, playing as an 18-year-old, playing senior club footy, you'd expect that if that's what you did. You know, there's no way you would have done it. Yeah. But, you just sort of, you forget what it's like.
Oh, that's so cool. And then we obviously heard about your transition into the work life. But what are your plans going forward? Like, your kids are starting to get a bit older. Have you got an ambition to coach, or?
There's a wee burning desire there, you know, and having this this pilot thing with Super Rugby this year has really put a bit of fuel on it, and seeing what could potentially come of it would be awesome. being able to look after the younger ones coming through and getting a national program like that established would be awesome.
Yeah.
You know, and seeing the benefits that it would create for young hookers coming through. That's really cool. Obviously, once the kids fly the coop, then having that in the back pocket will allow a little bit of travel and, you know, seeing the wide world again. In terms of coaching professionally, I don't know. You know, like I do love coaching, but you know, as seeing the amount of work that the coaches put in it's huge. You know, and then you don't get the ability to go out and take your frustrations out at the end of the week. You know, you just got to sit there and hope like it works.
Fingers crossed.
But yeah, I mean, I'm enjoying life outside of footy at the moment.
Yeah.
In terms of the ability to put the time into the family, everything like that. But I think I'll have another itch, you know, in a couple of years for sure. But in the meantime, let this throwing thing sort of take care of itself and just keep pushing that.
Yeah.
And obviously now that the boys have finished the World Cup, talk to Jace once he's sort of decompressed and see if that's a line that he wants to take.
Exciting times, mate. No doubt whatever you choose, you'll be very good at. But we have gone to the Instagram for some questions. We've got a few here. Quickly try and race through a few of these. Most common one was the story behind the try celebration, the old chicken wing, mate. People love that one, eh?
Yeah, I still get a fair few people ask for it now. But a lot of people thought that it was because I was allowed to eat KFC or something like that afterwards. But when we were kids, or when we were younger, growing up, one of my groomsmen, Kevin Robinson, when he got excited, he would do the chicken. You know, he would start clucking like a chicken and
just any time, like
just when he got excited. You know? And 9 times out of 10, it would be when we're in the Lone Star having beers in Invercargill. So when he got really excited, he'd break into the seagull and just go full flat. But never really got that into the try celebration. But yeah, so what it was just I knew that wherever the boys were in the world, they'd try and watch the game. Yeah. You know, so if I was able to score a try, I was just basically saying g'day to them.
You're excited.
Yeah. Excited and saying g'day and so that's
interesting, eh? Oh, the old chicken wing. Good to hear the story behind it. Okay, next one, best Cordy story.
Some of the ones that you know, like you think about, like back in the day, say a Southland one when I was just a kid.
Yeah.
We had Matt O'Connell, and he was a fairly good sculler. And so he stood up and he buffed this jug in something like 4 seconds. And it was like, holy hell. And then all of a sudden, because he had done it so well, the boys are like, do it again. So he just grabs another one and he blows over another jug and it's like, Jesus. And he did it so quick and it's like, do it again. So he blows through 3 jugs and then like, the first one was, or the last one was as quick as the first one, and the boys were wanting more. But he knew that he was done. He was like, no. You know, and you think, holy shit, and that stuff happened. But then, you know, like that's awesome as well. But then you've also got, you know, you've also got your team building stuff that you have now in a Cordy, which is equally as good because it's different times. Yeah. You know, and that's the thing, like, that one that we did for the boys last year.
Yeah, true. That's right.
You know, having the myself mule come in and then at the end, when we gave the leavers the chance to talk, and you know how powerful it was.
Mate, never seen anything like it.
Man, there's tears and I'm sitting there having to shoulder mule going, Jesus. And I'm wiping tears and I'm like, And it was pretty moving.
Yeah.
So that's the sort of stuff that the court sessions are really good for.
Yeah.
Because they bring you in so tight as a group that it allows you to be your true self, I suppose.
Yeah. So many different ways you can take it. Like, I'm sure if you had one like that back in your early Southland days, it would have been looked at a lot differently than what it is these days, wouldn't it?
I dare say it would end up in a fisticuff.
Okay. Niggliest player you played against? Probably that East Coast guy, was it?
Andrew Hoare.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, Hoare was Hoare, good mate, and we played a lot against each other. We played Honda Colts, stuff against each other back in the day, and then obviously Crusaders, Hurricanes, that sort of stuff. So yeah, we enjoyed it. And it was great because we were good mates off it, so it always resulted in a few beers, the banter and everything, the niggle. You knew that it was just that. Yeah. So come the end of the game, you knew you were going to be having a beer and shaking hands again.
Yeah. Oh, that's the good stuff, eh?
Yeah.
Okay, next one. Keys to being a good leader.
The ability to listen, I think now is and hearing people's opinions.
Yeah.
And that's a learned trait, learning that through a lot of time would be key. I definitely didn't have that at the start. But yeah, I think being a leader, you've definitely got to listen to what's around you, because if you've got a good gauge on what's coming in, then you can lead the way that you need to.
Yeah, I like it. Okay, two more. Tell the story of when your wife punched you in the face.
Which one? Actually, she tells this better than me.
Get her on.
She's probably a bigger lad than me too. But, so again, close to the point of being at the bottom, she'd had enough, and I come home and I was fairly well intoxicated. Anyway, she was like, I'm going to knock this prick out today, and so she lined me up, and I'm sort of swaying, and she gave it everything. If it's now, it's now. This is going to be the time. And she reckons she hit me that clean and flush that I should have dropped, but I just stood up and like nothing had even happened, and that infuriated her more. Because I didn't fall over, she thought, a stiff wind's just going to blow this guy over. Yeah. But yeah, so she whacked me full noise, and I
couldn't do it.
I didn't topple, so so she was it didn't sort of ease her mind. She was furious even more, but got a little bit of steam out of her.
Oh, that's so good. Okay, last one. Best piece of advice you have for a Woodland listener?
I suppose listen. And listen to the older guys that are prepared to give you the time. If they're prepared to give you the time, then then you need to be able to listen to take that knowledge.
Yeah.
If you take that knowledge, then some good's going to come out of it. And because in the end, I got to where I got to, and I'm totally happy with where I got to. But I could have got there a way easier way, and coming to Crusaders, I had all of these guys wanting to help, like Mark Hammett. I saw the likes of Sammy Whitelock on a Facebook post that he said about me talking to young players, and I'm not going to give you the jersey, but I'll give you everything that I can for you to take the jersey. So Hammer did that to me. I come from Invercargill, come from Southland and Devon heaps. He was told that I was going to take his spot and for me to, for him to teach me everything.
Yeah.
So he took me away and he's like, well, you'll learn how I fucking learned and you'll get a hiding and you'll learn from that.
Yeah.
And then walked away. I was like, okay, that was me, When I come to the Crusaders, Hammer comes up and he said, Deansy's told me that you're going to take my spot. So what I'll do is I need to make sure that you're going to be ready and I'll give you everything that I can, any knowledge that I can part with, then I'll do it. He said, but I'm not going to give you the jersey. It's up to you to take it. So that was his teaching. So I had Devon Heaps, who's a champion, don't get me wrong, absolute champion. And then Mark Hammett. So they were my two sort of, what do I do here? But coming from Invercargill where you got a chip on your shoulder, I probably, it wasn't until I was well down the track that I really understood what Hammer was trying to give me, and then when you flip side, when I gave that to the likes of Ben Fennell, Cody Taylor, Benny Fennell was the Corey Flynn, the young Corey Flynn. He just wanted me to, he was like, fuck off, you old cunt.
Yeah.
I'm better than you now. Yeah. See you later. Whereas Cody just soaked it up. He just asked questions, and now talking to Benny, he's like, geez, I probably should have asked more questions. So I suppose, that would be my bit of advice would be listen and, because the old boys have got knowledge, that's something that they've always got. And if they're happy to give it, soak it up. Yeah,
that's so cool because I also remember talking to Cody on the podcast around that sort of coming into the environment, learning off you, and he obviously spoke so highly of everything he learnt off you as well. So it's cool to hear both sides of that circle, and it's cool for guys in those positions because you see it and you know it when you're there. You're getting old and you see the young kid who's awesome, and you're like, okay, I don't know how much longer I've got, but like you say, it's so important not to just pass it on to him to make him really fight for it. And
mate, and that was, and like having the likes of T Paulo, Tony Copolani, those guys coming through, Quinton McDonald, and then you see all those guys off, and you're like, and then the ones that you see that oh fuck, I'm not going to get rid of these guys. When Cody come in and he's out there running like a centre, stepping, and it's like, holy shit, who is this kid? So, seeing those guys that are going to surpass you, it's easier to accept.
Yeah.
And then it's like, right, well, I've had a pretty good run.
Yeah.
I know the jersey's not forever.
Yeah.
Let's just put it in good stead.
Yeah, mate. What a way to finish one of the great podcasts. I knew it was going to be, been looking forward to this one for a while, but awesome to, get you on and sit down with you and hear from a true legend of, especially this region and New Zealand, and, a true lad. But appreciate you giving up your time, mate.
Too easy, mate. It's, like I said, long time listener and, really, really, enjoy what you do.
Appreciate it. You're a lad.